Today we're going to be talking about self-compassion and self-care. Have you ever really thought about how compassionate you can be to your friends or your loved ones, but then you think about how you treat yourself when you're dealing with a struggle and we lack compassion for ourselves? Let's talk today a little bit about the importance of showing ourselves some grace, and having self-compassion for ourselves will lead us to prioritizing our self-care. So we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of self-care. We're going to talk about some of those self-care traps as well too, and things that we shouldn't do, because we know self-care is important, but it's not just a buzzword. I hope you enjoy the session. Good morning. Thank you for coming. We know it's a rainy, gloomy day, but it's always important for us to talk about things that impact us as helpers in this crazy, crazy world where we're dealing with clients and patients and dealing with life stuff. Sometimes we have to take a moment to remind ourselves to also take care of ourselves. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about self-compassion and self-care. We talked in our last session about vicarious trauma, stress, burnout. We talked about all of those things and the importance of resiliency. And one thing that we pointed out when we talked about resiliency is the importance of self-compassion and self-care. So we're going to delve a little bit into that today. So today we're going to define the term self-compassion and explore how it's needed in addressing burnout and vicarious trauma. We're going to review various tips to practice self-compassion. Then we're going to talk about the importance of self-care, especially for those in the helping professions, and review ways to practice effective self-care. So let's start off with talking a little bit about compassion. And let's start with an activity where we think through, spend some time just for a moment thinking about a time when a friend or family member was going through a hard time or felt bad about themselves. What did you do in that situation? Think specifically about how did you act? What did you say? Even what tone did you use when you were talking about them? Anything pop into anyone's mind?
Empathy and active listening.
Okay. Active listening, empathy.
Soft tone.
Okay. Soft tones. What are some things that you did for them?
Check in.
Okay.
Regularly.
Mm-hmm. Checking in regularly. Okay. Now think about a time when you personally were struggling or feeling bad. What did you do in that situation? And think specifically again. How did you act? What did you say to yourself about the situation? Were you self-critical or were you kind to yourself? And let's be honest with ourselves too.
I'm sure I was not kind to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to withdraw.
Okay, withdraw.
I tend to emote.
Okay.
I'm self-critical.
So this is my fault. If I'd have done this differently, I can't believe it. Oh my gosh, I messed up again. Right? Exactly. So when we think about that, was there a difference between how you treated your friend who was suffering and how you treat yourself? Right? And when we talk about self-compassion really is just treating ourselves how we would treat others that we love or care or are concerned about, right? Generally, when a friend or someone we care about is having a hard time, we're not, shame on you. We're not coming down just with the hammer, critical, judging, oh, get over this, all of that. We're coming with that compassion, right? We're sharing care, concern, we're kind. We're, using gentle tones, all of those things. But we don't do the same thing for ourselves, right? And so we really need to think about that. What then might we do if we want to treat ourselves as we treat our friends? What are some things that we might think that we could do to be more compassionate to ourselves?
Try to remove some of the emotion. Take a step back
Mm-hmm.
and look at it differently.
Okay, so taking a step back, looking at it differently.
I find journaling for me,
Okay.
because I can get my thoughts out to process,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can get my thoughts back on track, and not be so critical of
Right.
myself.
Okay. So some time to process, journal, think it through. Very good suggestions. But I think if in those moments we do nothing but say, hey, what would I say? And insert a name, right? Be specific. Pick somebody that you really love, that you know you're going to be kind to and show compassion to. And, so for me, that would be my big sister, right? So saying to myself, if I'm struggling or going through a hard time and I find myself being really self-critical of myself, say to myself like, hey, what would you say to B in this situation? How would you respond to her? And then try to take those same things that I would say or do to her and use them on myself, right? We really are very good at times at being compassionate to others. But we are, just hearing you all share, it's like, I'm self-critical, we are our worst critics, right? And we're hardest on ourselves. And so we have to learn how to be compassionate. Dr. Christine Neff, and she has a whole website on compassion and self-compassion, and definitely a wonderful resource, selfcompassion.org. I would suggest visiting it. She has tips and tools and videos and just a lot of wealth of information, but she's done a lot of research over the years about compassion and the art of self-compassion. And she says it's a practice of goodwill, not good feelings. So sometimes we, equate compassion with feeling good, but it's more about goodwill. With self-compassion, we mindfully accept that the moment is painful and embrace ourselves with kindness and care and response, remembering that imperfection is a part of the shared human experience, right? So oftentimes we give others grace and say, they made a mistake, they're human. But we don't give ourselves that same grace, right? So when we talk about self-compassion, it's reminding ourselves that we're dealing with something. And if we're talking about compassion, we're generally dealing with something. We're struggling with something. We're having a hard time. And in those instances, we acknowledge that the moment may be painful or difficult. So we don't want to deny that. But we also have to embrace kindness and within ourselves, recognizing that we're not perfect, and that's okay. And so I really like that quote by her.
Do you think there's also a piece, at least for me, where I tend to minimize what I'm going through? Like, other people are going through worse, or like if it's grief, everybody goes through grief. Why aren't you, you coping better? Why aren't you dealing better? So that I know that's something I need to often tell myself, just because you're going through it doesn't mean it's not legit.
Exactly. No, very true. And you have both ends of the spectrum, right? So you have some people who minimize what they're going through because everybody else is going through something worse. And then you have others who, and it may be us at both times, we may do both, who has the experience that no one else is going through this. Like, this struggle is just solely something I'm going through and no one else has had such a hard time as me, right? So you have both ends of the spectrum. And so when we talk about the elements of self-compassion, because that feeds right into kind of three of the points that Dr. Neff really talks about, is one, common humanity. So that's really recognizing that there are shared experiences, feelings with others that help to combat isolation, right? And so when we do that, everybody else's problems are worse than mine, or I'm the only one experiencing these problems, what do? We isolate ourselves, right? And that then works counterintuitive to that common humanity that is needed when we're looking at self-compassion and mindfulness. And so when we talk about mindfulness with regards to self-compassion, yes, it's important to have mindful moments and do things. But when we're talking about mindfulness within self-compassion, we're really focusing on recognizing what the present situation is, being aware and acknowledging what's going on. So staying present and aware without over identifying with thoughts and emotions. So that goes back to the point that you were making about, these problems are just solely mine, or everybody else's problems are greater than mine. If we stay mindful, mindfulness in that moment acknowledges what the situation is. No matter who else experienced it or have not experienced it, the fact that you are experiencing it in that moment makes it real and valid. And we have to be mindful of that. And then self-kindness. And so that really is developing more of a practice to treat yourself kind and with understanding instead of judgment, right? Because oftentimes the first things we do is judge ourselves. And so really taking time and being intentional about, let me slow down, let me take a step and give myself some grace. And then when we talk about some self-compassion, there's a lot of different things we can do when we look at that pathway. Like, how do we build up our ability to be more compassionate to ourselves, right? One, just starting out with mistakes. First, we all make mistakes, right? We all make mistakes. Sometimes they're small mistakes. Sometimes they're big mistakes, right? But our mistakes do not define who we are. And too often, we will let one mistake, one bad judgment, one bad decision define who we are. Oh, I'm a terrible person. I'm such a bad person. I'm a failure, right? And then we start attributing these titles and these labels we put on ourselves that don't really define who we are. So starting off, one way to really build and learn to be more compassionate to yourself is to allow yourself to recognize that we all make mistakes, and then knowing that we can learn from our mistakes as opposed to letting our mistakes define us. Again, self-care is important, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But treating yourself with kindness and empathy. Releasing statements. So I like this. So I like positive affirmations. So a lot of people, like to do, affirmations and like to do positive affirmations. And so, I have, a friend that, she writes stuff on Post-it notes and, has stuff by her bed, that always, okay, I'm going to say these things. I'm going to say that. If that works for her, fine, wonderful. I don't always remember what the affirmations are, right? I'm like, okay, what was I supposed to say today? So then I end up getting more stressed out about not remembering my positive affirmation, and then I'm all in the same cycle again. But releasing statements, I really like this concept as well, because instead of, it allows us to use affirmations to let go of negativity, right? So a releasing statement says, it's okay. You made a mistake. But that's okay. It allows you to forgive yourself. It allows you to release yourself from all the judgment that you put on yourself, So you'll do better next time. It's not the end of the world, right? So releasing statements allows you to kind of get away from that criticism and judgment that we often have on ourselves. Self-acceptance, right? How many times we try to be somebody else? We try to measure up to somebody else. We define ourselves based on somebody else. You have to measure yourself by yourself, right? Stop measuring yourself, comparing it to everyone else. I'm not as good at this person, or this person looks better than me, or this person has these things. Except when we have self-acceptance, we accept the good things about ourselves, those things that we're really skilled at, and we also accept our flaws and our imperfections, right? The things that we're not so good at. And in doing that, it gives us the ability then to, if it's something we want to improve, to work towards improving it because we accepted that's who we are. Or if we want to find an AI tool that helps us throw everything in there and helps us figure out this Excel worksheet because that's not my skill, it allows us to do that because we acknowledge and accept this is who I am. And some of our flaws and imperfections just be a part of who we are, but it also may be things that we want to work on improving, right? But if we don't acknowledge it and accept it, then we won't move forward towards doing that. Mindfulness, again, being present and aware of one's own thoughts, right? So as we said before, so you're not over-identifying with your feelings or emotions related to everyone else, but acknowledging this is the moment that I'm in. This is my current state and situation. And this is how I feel about it. And being okay with owning that. So many times we don't deal with situations, we don't give ourselves self-compassion because we won't even acknowledge the moment and what's going on. So starting there is important. This is a big one, right? Non-judgment. So not only working towards not judging ourselves, but working towards not judging ourselves so quickly. We do it so fast, don't we? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Amy, what is wrong with you? Here you go again, like really quickly. Like you said you were gonna stop doing that, and here you are drinking that can of Pepsi yet again, right? We judge ourselves so quickly and develop negative self-assessments. But the problem is if we keep doing that, then that begins to build and begins to impact how we view ourselves and how we accept ourselves. And when we judge something as bad, we then feel it isn't deserving of compassion, right? So if we are judging ourselves as bad or flawed or imperfect, we're not worthy of compassion. And so that's why we then get into that cycle where we're being harder on ourselves and treating everybody else better than we do ourselves. Validation. We have to let go of this need for external validation. Sometimes you're going to get it, sometimes you aren't. Mm-hmm. And we really have to get away from, did I do okay? I wonder if they appreciated what I did. They didn't say thank you. Oh my gosh, my evaluation is coming up. I wonder, did they appreciate all the extra work that I did in putting those presentations together? Is that going to be reflected on my evaluation? Sometimes we let other people's view of us take more weight and precedent over how we view ourselves or what we know is true, right? And so we have to get away from always having this need for external approval and validation in what we do, because that can be exhausting, right? Being everything to everybody else so that everybody else is happy and pleased with who we are can be exhausting. And so if we're beginning to have self-compassion, we really have to let go of that need. And then the flip side, so we have to get away from the need for external validation, but we still have to recognize the importance of connection, right? We are not, as humans, we are herd animals. We are not, I'm just going to be my own little person unto my island. That's not how we were created, right? We need each other. We need connection, right? Think of some of the times when you were feeling the worst, right? Didn't you feel better when you went to be around that person that just always brings you joy or gives you peace or calms you down, right? Our safe spaces, right? Oftentimes our safe spaces aren't a house or a place. It's generally a person, right? And so recognizing that need for connection, building relationships, and seeking support is so important when we're talking about self-compassion. So keeping all of those things in mind. Developing self-compassion and practicing self-compassion should then lead us to prioritizing self-care, which then helps us to build and foster a healthier life, right? Because if I'm being compassionate for myself, I'm going to recognize that I need to take care of myself, right? So I need to engage in self-care. I need to do some self-care activities. This is a slide from the previous training, but just a reminder, as we were talking about building resiliency and overcoming compassion fatigue, we looked at some of the things that are important, right? And some of them are implement short-term solutions like quick fixes or holidays or massages. Like those things are good for self-care, right? But is that really what everything about self-care is? Just a quick fix, right? Sometimes we need a break from what's going on in the moment, but we can't use it to avoid as well. So it's important to develop some of those longer-term resiliency skills that we talked about. And when we begin to do that, then we move away from just quick fixes to how can I prioritize health and wellness and make it a top priority and a part of my everyday being, right? So self-care shouldn't be, oh, I got to remember to do self-care. If we're effectively doing self-care, it's a part of our everyday. What are we doing every day to make sure we're, taking care of ourselves? So it's watering our own plants, right? Self-care is taking the time to do the things to help you live well. It's as simple as that. Watering our own plants, pouring into our own buckets. Because on a rainy day, we can benefit from getting some water, right? But when it dries up, if we don't have access to watering ourselves, we can begin to wither. So we really have to be really looking at that. So let's talk about some effective self-care, right? Effective self-care should be proactive, planned, and intentional. One of the problems about self-care generally and how it's talked about and how we engage in it now is too often it's reactive. We wait until there is a problem to then say, oh, I need some self-care. We wait till we're totally stressed out and at the point of exhaustion and complete burnout to say, oh, I need to do something, right? Our self-care needs to be proactive, right? So when you think about self-care, right, taking care of yourself, a basic thing is eating food, right? You can't live if you don't eat or drink water. These are just basic things. That's part of caring for yourself. If we just waited until, oh, I'm about to die of starvation, literally, to eat some food, is that really taking care of ourselves? So we have to think along those same lines when we think about every other aspect of our life. We can't it's something we should be doing every day, a part of our regular routine. So it needs to be proactive, planned, and intentional, really thought out. One way in doing that is recognizing that you have to control the controllables. So often, the things that we get most stressed about are the things we have no control over. And that's when we need to learn, I have to let that go, right? I can't change the situation, but I can change how I react to it, how I respond to it. So as much as the weather in, Northeast Ohio drives me crazy, and I've lived here my whole life, right? I cannot control the fact that one day it's 40 degrees and the next day it's 80 degrees and the next day it's 20 degrees. I can't control that, right? But if it stresses me out to the level where I can't take it anymore, I can control whether I decide to move somewhere else, right? Those are the things that I control. But stressing out daily about the weather, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's cold and rainy again, and letting it totally throw off my day, right? So really looking at what are the things that we can control. Control the controllables. Oh, this person at work is so difficult, right? I may not be able to change that person, but can I change my interactions? Can I change how I relate to them? Can I maybe do some additional things to help that person or try to understand why they're so difficult? I can control me. So control the controllables. Prepare for the storms. Oftentimes, our self-care is running away from the storm or running away from the problem. But running from a storm or ignoring a storm never made that storm go away, right? And so if our use of self-care is only to try to ignore that this storm, not even acknowledge. So going back to acknowledging how we're feeling, what's going on in this present moment, what is the present situation? And oftentimes when we do that, we may see a problem or a struggle, we may see it coming. Before it even impacts us, we may see it coming. Or we know that when we talk about shared human experience, we already know that struggles are going to come. But if we only wait to develop a plan for how we deal with the struggle, once the struggle hits, it makes it more difficult for us to withstand the impact of that struggle or that storm, right? So if I live in an area where tornadoes are known to come, I'm going to have certain things set up to prepare me if I know a tornado is coming, right? So if I know I work in an environment where grief is present, stress is present, burnout is present, high demands. If I know this is the reality, I don't have to wait to, oh, I know this is the time of the year where things get bad. I'm going to wait then to do self-care. I'm already putting those things in place to make sure I'm doing the things so that I'm okay. So we have to prepare for the storms. So being proactive, planned, and intentional, right? Controlling the controllables, preparing for the storms. And then it should focus on all aspects of our well-being, right? And so washing our hands is self-care, right? Because it keeps us from getting germs and getting sick. So, and we've made that a regular part of our day, right? If nothing else from COVID, we learned to wash our hands. But generally, I hope, most people knew to do that beforehand, but some didn't. But anyway, we make that a part of our regular self-care. We wash our hands, right? So when we're talking about all aspects of our well-being, what are the things that we can put in place? When we're talking about our physical health, right? So if we know part of my physical health, I need to exercise, right? So am I doing the exercise, the things I need to do? Am I focusing on exercise, nutrition, all of those things? My mental health, right? My cognitive and psychological well-being. What are the things that I'm focusing on? I have to be concerned about emotional health. Am I managing my feelings, discussing my emotions? Am I in tune with how I feel and okay with sharing that and discussing that? Do I even know how to label how I'm feeling? Have you ever felt some way and you're like, I just don't even know how I'm feeling right now? Sometimes when we get so overwhelmed, we can't even understand, why am I so stressed out? What is going on? What's going on? So being in tune with our emotional health, our spiritual health, right? And that looks different for everybody. But recognizing what is it that is important to you? What gives you purpose and meaning in life? And are we doing things to make sure that we're doing self-care around those things as well too? Or are we neglecting those aspects of our life because we're so focused on every other aspect of our life? Financial health, right? How many times do we get stressed out about bills, what needs to be paid, when you look at your bill sheet and you look at, your expenses and your revenue, we usually don't talk about that when we talk about our personal finances. But if we do, okay, my expenses, my revenue, right? So and then we begin to have all of these stressors, right? What are some things we can put in place to help us build our financial health as well too? Because that has an impact on our well-being, on our stress. So, okay, I want to go on this trip and I need to budget, I need to save because I want to go to Cancun, I want this nice vacation. Don't really have the money for it, right? So, I didn't save, so I'm gonna go get this loan. And now I'm back from vacation and 2 years later, I'm still paying for that vacation, right? So I've added additional stress. So just even thinking about those things when we're talking about being proactive, planned, intentional, every aspect of our life. Our social health, right? How many times do we neglect the things that are important to us? Getting together with friends, socializing, all those things that are important because I got more work to do. I'm exhausted. I don't have any energy left. And so when we're talking about well-being, we have to focus on all of those things. And our environmental health, what's going on around us, what's going on in our surroundings as well too. Are we taking care of those things as well too? Are we making sure that those are okay, right? So that is as much as the air that you breathe, right? Am I making sure that I'm in situations where I can breathe some fresh air? Are there things in my environment that are impacting my health as well too? So it's important when we talk about self-care that we don't too often times we just focus on one little thing, but there's so many aspects of our well-being that all are, when we think about them, they're interrelated and they impact one another. So we have to be concerned about all of them. So now have I totally overwhelmed you in talking about all the aspects of self-care that we have to be concerned about? Because sometimes when we talk about self-care, I think it does feel and come off as being a bit overwhelming. So when we're talking about effective self-care, we want to prioritize connection because that's key. It's key to who we are. We want to know that we matter to somebody and that others matter to us. It's core to who we are. And so we need a sense of belonging. Connection helps individuals feel like they are part of something larger than themselves, which reduces feelings of isolation and loneliness. When we think about what was so difficult about COVID, what's so difficult now with everyone relying just on social media, it's loneliness is growing, right? People don't know how to interact with one another. They're not trying to interact with one another because I can just send a text or I can just like your photo, and that's the extent of our connection. It's not enough, right? It's not enough. So we really need to prioritize connection. It gives us a sense of belonging. It gives us emotional support, right? So just like, we're somebody's person, right? When they're going through something and they know they can call on me. We all need to have a person or people or a group of people. We need a support system, right? I know who if I'm having a really bad day, I know who I can pick up the phone and call. Or I know who I could come and sit on their couch and be like, I just need to lay on your couch today. I just need to be in your presence. We know that emotional support is important. It helps improve our mood, right? There have been times where things just feel completely haywire. And then I get around my people and we're laughing and we're joking and we're having a good time and my mood improves and I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. It also gives us purpose and meaning. Connecting with others gives us a sense of purpose, knowing that we have people to care for and support, and that we have people that will care for and support us as well, and that our actions make a difference in this world. So we really do want purpose-driven lives. We want to know that we have an impact, that we have a meaning in this world. So prioritizing connection gives us all of those things. I like this little video because I think we've gotten self-care so wrong. Self-care has gotten so commercialized. So when you think about self-care, you think about all the things I have to buy in order to do self-care. No. When we talk about self-care being a daily part of everything we do, you have within yourself to do everything that you need to do to care for yourself.
Hi, welcome back to Rebel Health. I am Dr. Ellen Bora, a holistic psychiatrist based in New York City and currently coming to you from Byron Bay, Australia. And today what I want to talk about is self-care. So I think we've gotten to a place where self-care, many people are turning to it to help themselves heal from chronic stress and anxiety and depression and insomnia and burnout. And I'm totally on board with everybody trying to reach for ways to take care of themselves when they're suffering in these ways. But I'm afraid that we've gotten to a place where self-care has become this buzz term and it's become commodified. It's become a consumer moment where we feel like there's a shopping list that you need to bring, and you have to fill your Amazon cart with the objects before you're ready to start self-care. You need to get a salt lamp and essential oil diffuser and a particular kind of eye mask and a certain kind of green tea ritual set. And nothing against any of those things. I think I personally own all of those things. But I just want people to recognize that self-care is free and available to you at all times right in front of you right now, wherever you are. And I think that there's something about the way we've approached self-care, which is, it's twofold. There is the fact that since we have such a stressed and burnout culture, I think people have recognized that there's a market here and they want to sell us things we don't need. And then I also think that it has to do with our tendency to want to white knuckle things, to be active and to do and to be very yang as opposed to yin, because we're just not that good at sitting back, surrendering and accepting and just letting things be. But self-care is exactly the kind of moment when you want to practice those yin practices, the surrender, the letting go. And so rather than feeling like you need to do the thing, to do a ritual, to do a practice for self-care, look at ways that you can strip things away and actually just take a pause and do less. I think self-care can be sitting in your room, listening to music, staring out the window. And it can certainly be just taking a walk, talking to a friend, or taking a walk in nature and being still and being silent. And so if you really get a lot out of the aromatherapy diffuser and the green tea ritual, more power to you. Definitely keep doing that. But also try and emphasize just doing less as an act of self-care. And you'll save some of your money, and I think you'll get an even more deeply restorative practice. So I hope that's helpful. I'll see you next time on Rebel Health.
Thoughts? I love the fact that she talked about self-care as she's on the beach with the waves rolling in, all right? It's like, I'm based in New York, but I'm currently in Australia on this beach, right? So I appreciate that. But any thoughts about what she shared?
Yes.
I know, right?
Please. Notes from the beach.
Yes.
That's good. That would be lovely.
Any thoughts about that?
I agree. I think sometimes the simplest thing to do is just to start with what's right in front of you and take it a minute. Whatever that is for you. And for me, we always, like my husband and I always try to change up what we're doing because it feels like it can become rote. And then you're defeating the purpose of trying to do self-care.
Yeah.
It's just, another thing to add to your routine.
Exactly.
If it loses its meaning, change it up.
And we've already established that we're self-critical, right? So if I have this self-care routine that I have to stick to, these things that I have to do, right? Sometimes we get so stressed out about our self-care that we're defeating the purpose of the self-care. And when we talk about self-care, it's those everyday things. So if I don't make it to the gym, does that mean that I haven't practiced any self-care that day? Right? Because self-care that day may have been a very difficult day. Self-care that day may have been taking 5 seconds, 2 minutes to do some deep breathing. That might have been my self-care for that day, right? So we have to have enough things that are free and have access to us that we don't feel like we have to go and purchase all of these things before we can do self-care, right? Oh, this is going to make you, you need to, get the salt lamps and do the different detox and all of these detox teas, and you need to get this detox regimen, and you need to start this, and like so many things. Like you can get so overwhelmed with all of the things that's for sale for self-care, right? But we talked about the importance of self-care on every level, right? So if I'm spending thousands and thousands of dollars on self-care, not particularly helping my financial health as well. But I think that's important because we've gotten the term has gotten so overused, I think, that we have gotten away from clearly understanding what it means. Having self-compassion is self-care. Giving myself grace is self-care. So some traps to avoid. Self-care that's really avoidance, right? So when we're using self-care just to avoid the situation. Now, as I said before, sometimes breaks or holidays from a situation are needed, right? If the situation is too tense, so much is going on, I just need to kind of remove myself from it, give myself a mental break from it, that's fine. But if that self-care is just like, I'm going to stay in this mental break and never deal with whatever issue it is, then we're using it as an avoidance. And as we said before, does avoidance make the storm go away? No, we still at some point need to address it. So temporary breaks are important. However, we have to be mindful not to use self-care as a way to avoid problems or concerns that need to be addressed. They can help us, give us the time to step back, to journal, to process, to think about how we want to deal with it. But if our self-care is just, I don't want to deal with that person, I ain't got time for that person. No, I'm taking care of me. I'm doing self-care. I'm going to get my hair done, right? That's my self-care, right? So all of those things, if we're just using it to avoid a situation, we need to be careful of that. Self-care that depletes your resources, right? So healthy self-care should leave you feeling better in the long run. It should energize you and help you feel as though you have the tools you need to get through each day. If your self-care is not doing that for you, then it's depleting your resources. Then you're probably not doing the self-care that is specific to you, right? So some people say, when I was really down, I had people, tell me like, after my mom passed, I just began, walking, then I started running, and that just really worked for me, right? And so I was like, okay, if I decided that, okay, that's what I need to do, right? And then I go out and I buy these shoes so that I can go running, and I start this routine, and every day I'm stressed out because I got to go running because they said this is what made them feel better. I'm depleting my resources because I'm not doing self-care that is identified to me. I'm doing what somebody else did that helped them. That might not be what helps me. And so really looking at are these things just depleting? I love to read, but sometimes my self-care of reading works against me because I get so caught up in a book that I look up, it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm still reading this book, knowing I got an 8 o'clock meeting in the morning, right? That didn't help me because that depleted my resources. Now I'm going to start my next day exhausted. And so then I'm like, then I'm going to be tired all day. And then I'm like, I'm going to need more resources. So being, mindful of those things. If we're doing it in such a way where it's not building us up and we're, overutilizing it and it's not really helping us, we need to be mindful of that. Unsustainable, unhealthy self-care habits. So when you select a self-care habit and a self-care activity or something you want to do for self-care, there's a whole lot of possibilities, right? The possibilities are endless when it comes to self-care. But you want to ask yourself, is this something that I can continue to do daily or even weekly and not expect a side effect or two? So when it's nice and it's hot outside, and I've had a hard day, sometimes I say, ooh, ice cream would be nice. It would make me feel so much better today. My self-care today is going to be, I'm going to get me some ice cream, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with ice cream and having some ice cream, but is that a sustainable self-care where, okay, every day, every time I experience some difficult situation or have a bad day, I'm going to get some comfort food, right? If that's my only option, we have to determine, is that sustainable and is it healthy? So really determining and picking things that, really, I had someone say, well, what do you like to do for self-care? And I was like, oh, I like to go to the casino. Okay, that may, so again, going back to,
Maybe not a great idea.
is it something that you can do daily or even weekly and not expect a side effect or two, right? There's something we all have our little things we enjoy doing that we can do, but if we use that as this is how I deal with struggles, or this is my sole self-care activity, it may not be, the best choice. Self-care that looks a lot like work. So when we think about our hobbies and the things that we like to do in our free time, if those things look exactly like the stuff we do at work, it may not be giving us that break or rejuvenation that we need, right? So if my job is in front of a computer, figuring out Excel spreadsheets all day, and then my side hobby is going to an agency that needs a volunteer, and I'm just going to do in my side hobby what I do during my day, right? It's not very helpful, right? Because then you're just doing there's no break in the routine. And so it's less helpful if our hobbies look exactly like our jobs. So keep it in that mind. So I love that the pastor over here is filming me, right? So if his side job was just doing the same thing he does during his regular day, but having different skills and different things, it, kind of can rejuvenate us. So keeping that in mind. Using self-care as an excuse for your behavior. People can label even the most unhelpful of behaviors as self-care if they want to. Have you experienced this before?
No, I was trying to think of a situation where, somebody did that. That's interesting.
Okay, so you've committed to friends, you've planned this, that we're going to meet up and go for dinner, planned it for months, right? And then that you're so looking forward to it, that importance of connection. And that morning, I'm sorry, I just can't come. It's just been too stressful. I need to do some self-care. Right? Or that's just who I am. I'm taking care of myself, right? So sometimes we move away from being compassionate to others. We take that self-compassion a little too far, and we turn it into self-indulgence, and we call that self-care, and we become real selfish with it. Like, no, this is my me time. I can't believe she called me. I was dealing with my me time, right? And us time is important. But when you use that as an excuse to treat others badly, to not respect the connection or the relationship that you have with someone else, and then label that as self-care, right?
Yep.
Or, I know they're depending on me at work today, but I don't feel like dealing with them. I need self-care. Now, do we need mental health days? Yes, we do. But am I going to do that at a day? Like if I woke up this morning, like I know I'm supposed to be at Grace House. I know I have a presentation to do, but it was just a really bad day and I need some self-care. Like I need to go get a massage. They'll be all right.
I do need a massage.
I need to pack for my vacation, right? They can figure it out. So, and again, when we're doing things like that, our self-care hasn't been planned. It hasn't been, it's just reactive, right? And so being mindful of those. Thinking self-care is supposed to always feel good. Does it always feel good to do the things we're supposed to do? Especially if you don't like to exercise. So that, truth moment, I'm not a big person that loves to exercise. So every time I go to my doctor and he's like, you need to increase your, I know, doc, I know I need to exercise more, right? And it'll be good it's good for my health, right? That's self-care. I need to be doing those things. But we've convinced ourselves in thinking self-care is feel good, right? So when some people talk about self-care, I'm going to get my hair done. I'm going to get my nails done. They're more concerned about doing things that make them look better, but may not really make them feel better, right? And then they complain, I have someone like, oh, myself, I have to go get my hair done. And then after they go get their hair done, they complain about the fact that they were there for 4 hours because she overbooked. And then, so how much of that was really self-care? How much did you really relax if you're then complaining so much about the experience?
My haircut or hair done is self-care.
But people,
Not relaxing.
right. But for some people, they define that as, so making sure our self-care aren't those things that we do just to look good, right? So self-care doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it's about doing uncomfortable things, right? So as I said before, budgeting doesn't always feel good. I want to go out to dinner. I want to spend some money on that. I don't want to just save. But it may be beneficial for me to do that. Dealing with a difficult situation, addressing a difficult situation may not always feel good. Talking about things that impact us, talking about our feelings and emotion, doesn't always feel good, but it's necessary. And so recognizing that self-care isn't always about feeling good. This one is important, as I said before, assuming it's one size fits all. It's important to know what you need to do to take care of yourself in your life. Sometimes it's very tempting, though, to feel the pressure to do what everybody else is doing. And so that's why you see all these trends, like, oh, I got to get the salt lamp, the essential oils. I need to take these vitamins. I need to start on this detox routine. I need to do this and do that and do that. Make sure you're doing the things that are important to you. Using self-care as an excuse to self-sabotage. I think I spoke a little bit about this before. So this is indulging in unhealthy things or reaching for those quick temptations by telling yourself, you worked hard, you deserve it. How many times we do that, right? You deserve it, Amy. Go get that ice cream. Now, am I saying this to say that I'm not going to eat ice cream? I'm going to eat ice cream. I love ice cream. But I recognize that it's not an everyday thing. I should not be eating ice cream every day, right? And if my only self-care is then reaching for those things that can self-sabotage me, I need to be mindful of those things as well too. But sometimes we do that, those quick fixes. You deserve it. You deserve to go on a shopping spree. They've been so stressful at work this week. You deserve to just go spend your whole paycheck on some new outfits, right? So making sure your self-care isn't self-sabotage. So just a reminder, when we think about self-care, recognizing you have all the tools that you need to take care of yourself right within yourself and around you. Focus on the connection to others. Our support systems are so important, both in building our ability to be compassionate to others and allowing others to be compassionate to ourselves. As we're compassionate to others, then we can learn how to be compassionate to ourselves as well too. So recognizing that very important piece of connection, recognizing that our self-care should be planned, intentional, proactive, and not just reactive. If the only time we think about self-care is when something is going wrong, then we're not doing self-care right. It should be a daily part of everything we do. So recognizing just the little things, taking a moment to think back about a happy memory or a time or something that brought you joy in the midst of a difficult time can be self-care right in that moment. So yes, there are other things we can do, but then there's a whole list of things that we can do on a daily basis to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. Recognizing that we have to be concerned about every aspect of our well-being. And then also preparing for the storms, preparing for the struggles, and not waiting until the tornado is right over top of us to decide, I need to figure out what to do to be okay, right? That might be a little too late to build up a storm shelter. We need to be building our storm shelter before the storm hits.